welcome to Craig Brenton, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Craig. Sounds like you're a MasterChef wannabe yourself there. Listing off all the ingredients as if you knew them intimately. What a wonderful breakfast. What a wonderful atmosphere here, Kate, in the Goodwood Institute. It is the first time I've ever actually been in this hall, and it is lovely and warm, lovely and cosy. Great being here with you. Great meeting you. What an honour. What an honour. 2011 winner of MasterChef. You're probably wondering, though, what's the weatherman doing in the kitchen? And I know my wife would say exactly the same thing. So anyway, because this is cooking, and I'll talk about how the link with the weather, but assuming you missed the forecast, scattered showers tomorrow, top of 15 degrees, showers easing out on Saturday. If we pull up the synoptic chart up there, that'll be great. No, just kidding. No, you know, actually, when you think about it, Kate, weather and food go hand in hand, and particularly when you talk about fresh produce, because particularly with fresh produce, climate is of course has everything to do with all the fruit and vegetables, all the grain, etc. that we actually eat. And when you consider all the ingredients we have here, the ingredients that goes into the carrots, into the fruit and veg initially, rain, temperature. Well, think about it.
Desperate to prove his worth being here.
Well, true. So climate affects obviously our fresh produce.
Absolutely.
And then there's another one. I'll just draw this one too, because it affects our appetite. I know, I'll shut up about the weather. But over summer we enjoy our cold salads and ice cream, and then we have a cold night like tonight and we enjoy our vegetables and our hot apple pies. Are there apple pies here tonight or not?
No apple pies, but we're close.
Oh, okay. Well, Kate, what are we going to be serving up for now?
So, tonight I'm going to demonstrate two different things for you.
Oh, it's just I love my hot apple pies, that's all.
Yeah, right. I'm not sure if I can just push one out of nowhere. What we're going to do first of all is we're actually going to do a savoury dish. Okay. We're going to do a spiced lamb with a warm lentil salad.
Beautiful, sensational.
And then in a little bit later on we're going to do a dessert, avocado poached pears with mascarpone and pecan pralines.
Oh, that sounds great. Well, first of all, can I just congratulate you, and maybe you can join me here on this, folks, for the caramelised onion tarts. How good were they? Fantastic. Yeah, they were sensational. Thank you very much. Now, as we make a start here, folks, we're just going to keep chatting away across the evening, but this is an interactive night. There'll be an opportunity if you want to ask Kate your own questions. Hold on to them, because a little bit later on in segment 2, we'll get you to ask questions if you've got some up your sleeve. For the time being,
ask you questions about the weather as well.
They can do that if they want, but they hear more about the food, I'm sure, and wanting to get stuck into it. So we'll make a start. We'll just keep chatting away.
Sure.
Once we do start, tell us about your background, because I don't know where you've come from, where did you grow up, where you're living now, and a bit more about your background.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Sydney, as did my husband. 6.5 years ago, we moved to Orange. So that's 4 hours west of Sydney.
Beautiful. Beautiful spot.
Beautiful spot.
God's
big
country.
Foodie region. So it just suits me down to the ground. So we're a big food bowl for New South Wales. We have lots of, actually quite a similar winter climate to here in Adelaide. And in fact, as I've driven through Adelaide, I've been to Adelaide a few times now, and I love it because I just feel like it's a big version of Orange. Lots of beautiful old buildings, big old trees, wonderful food.
Orange trees? Orange trees? Oranges
in
orange?
We can't grow oranges in Orange.
You're kidding? That seems strange.
Well, fortunately, if you go a few towns away, they have a beautiful citrus growing climate. We're on a high altitude. You should understand all these things. And we're not going into too much detail, I'll get myself into trouble. We can't grow oranges, no citrus.
Wow.
So the town was named after Lord Orange, apparently, whoever he was. So my kids find that incredibly hilarious that we live in Orange but we can't grow oranges there.
What were you doing before MasterChef came about?
So just before MasterChef I was a full-time stay-at-home mum.
Yep.
I've got 3 children. Erin is now 10, Liam is 8 and Maya has just turned 6.
Beautiful.
I sometimes still say she's 5 because I forget her birthday was only last week. And prior to that I was a primary school teacher.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so
well, we're going to talk about how MasterChef came into being for you, but we should make a start.
Let's make a start. One of the big things I learned on MasterChef is about timing in the kitchen. It was one of the things I was not so great at before I went in. And the idea is thinking through, obviously, which parts that are going on the plate take the longest, do them first. So it was often if we had to do multiple courses, I often started with dessert because it needed to take a bit longer in the oven or whatever it is. So tonight we're actually going to start with the warm lentil salad.
Now this to me looks like the camp oven barbecue.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, there we go. Fantastic. Thanks. Legends. Rightio. Now you're going to test me on this one.
Okay, now this is where we hope you don't set off the fire alarms.
See you later, eyebrows. Oh, there we
Excellent.
go.
And we'll turn this one on as well.
There we go.
Okay,
Oh.
all right. Cooking with gas, literally. Okay, so into our saucepan, we're actually going to put just a spoonful of duck fat. Not known for my high nutrition cooking. Duck fat is just one of those things that has the most beautiful flavour. So we're going to put that...
Duck fat. Hang on. Duck fat and flavour? Wow, never thought that. That's cool.
So we've got duck fat in there, and you'll notice in the heat, it just dissolves and becomes a translucent mixture quite quickly.
Picking that up, are we? Legend.
And once that's warm... It's always interesting cooking with cam stoves because they're different in every place where you cook. When that's warm, we're just going to fry off a few onions, carrots, garlic, so some aromats, things that give flavour. A big thing that I learnt on MasterChef was think about putting in flavour at every possible opportunity. So I think it's easy sometimes if you've just, it says in a recipe add water to something, think, well, what's a liquid that I could add that has even more flavour? So wine or stock or something like that.
Ginger beer? No? Okay, all right.
This could be an interesting evening. Here, how about you stir the
onions?
That's not too tricky. So we're going to just stir those until they sort of soften a little bit.
Okay.
And it's at this point that we're starting to get the flavour already in the bottom of the pan. It's okay, actually, if they brown a little bit on the bottom. So we don't have to stir it continuously. We just have to kind of make sure they don't burn. Here, do you want me to take over?
No, you're right. Where did your passion for cooking come from? Where did all that start?
Look, it's really interesting because I look at my immediate family and I think my mum is actually quite a good cook. She argues differently, but she doesn't love it. She cooks just to feed the family. But Maggie B talks about... Are you coping there?
Yeah, it's all right. Getting
Maggie
stuck
B
on the
talks
side there a
about
bit, that's all.
a foodie gene. And I kind of think she might be right because my nana was an avid cook, particularly a baker.
Yep.
But she lived a long way from us. She was a classic farmer's wife. And so we only saw her once or twice a year, but she loved cooking. And I have loved it since I was a kid. I remember it was one long summer holidays. Rachel, there. One long summer holidays. I was about 8 years old, and I remember saying to Mum, "I'm bored," and she said to me, "Well, I know, why don't you cook something?" And I grew up in the era of Peter Russell Clark.
Oh,
and
yes.
King,
how good was that?
Lots of TV cooking shows.
Yeah.
So I decided I was going to make this cake. I was going to make it coffee cake. I don't know why an 8-year-old thinks of coffee cake. Instant coffee, of course. Girl of the 80s. And it was layered, and I was going to pipe all this gorgeous icing on the top. But I spent the whole day putting everything into little containers first, had it all set up, and then talked to the wall as if I was on TV, making this coffee cake. And at the end of the day, I really loved it, and I thought that was fantastic. And my mum now thinks it's absolutely hilarious because I do it as a job. So that's quite funny. So we'll put in some carrot.
Beautiful.
So I have just always loved it. Go for it. Stir around.
Just better check.
Yeah.
Ain't for it to go the other way. Hey, I mean, MasterChef, did you ever think that you'd not only be on it, but actually win it? I mean, that's amazing. How did that all come about for you?
Do you know, it's a little bit interesting because I kind of didn't really intend to go on it.
How did it start?
So what happened was, my husband is one of those people who kind of just uncanny ability to know what's going on all the time, everywhere.
Yeah.
He came home from work one day. He's a primary school teacher, so he doesn't work in television or anything. He came home one day and he said, "Hey, there's this new show coming called MasterChef." This was before season 1. And he said, "They've got this version of it in the UK. I think you should go on it." I said, "I'm not going on TV. It's ridiculous." But I watched it online and I thought, "Oh, that looks like so much fun."
Yes.
Because I've always loved cooking. And so I went online, filled out this really short application form, but the last question was, "Are you willing to be away from your family for up to 4 months?" And my baby at that time was 18 months old.
It's a big
and I
call,
thought,
isn't it?
actually, no, I'm not willing to do it. So I shut it down, didn't send it. You can imagine then that I actually was quite interested in watching it. So I watched quite a lot of the first season, not every episode. Second season, didn't miss an episode, loved it. Got hooked. It was a little bit... couldn't believe I was actually watching reality TV. Never really been into reality TV. So I always say, I don't watch reality TV except for MasterChef. And what I would do, I'm just going to add a little bit of garlic here.
Okay. Now, I've got to warn you, I'm a typical bloke. I struggle to walk and chew gum at the same time. So if you're going to ask me to do more than 2 things, it's not going to work. We may as well call it a night.
I'll cook and talk. Now, I'm not sure if you can see in here, but there's tiny little bits of golden brown that are coming out in the onion. That's good.
Smells great too.
The natural sugar, there's sugar in all food, basically. I have natural sugars in varying amounts. Obviously, savoury food has less, sweet food has more. But what we're doing when we apply heat is we're drawing the sugars out and we're cooking them, and that's where a lot of the deep flavour comes from. And we'll see that in a little while with our meat as well. So if we get those little brown bits, that's a good sign that we're getting some beautiful colour. So they're all softened. So what I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to add my lentils. Now we're just using French lentils here. They're nice and small, so they cook nice and quickly. Coat them around. And because that onion has started sort of browning and caramelising, it also slightly starts to stick on the bottom of the pan, which is great.
Oh, so you want that?
You want that because then we add wine, not water.
Yes, thanks. Here we go. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it'll be that good in with the water, but anyway.
That's right.
So we add that in. We hear that sizzle. That's what we want, because what that does is that liquid then releases all those caramelised bits off the bottom of the pan and brings that flavour into what we're doing. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to cover them with chicken stock.
Not just any chicken stock.
No.
Maggie Beer chicken stock. How good is that?
I'm a big fan of Maggie Beer, so I was quite excited when I first heard chicken stock.
It's a wonderful place out there. If you haven't had the chance to get out there, beautiful spot, isn't it?
Absolutely. Now we're also going to not just leave the flavour there, we're going to add some thyme leaves as well. I love thyme, and they go beautiful. It goes beautifully with French food and lentils.
We're out of time.
Lentils.
Oh, just joking.
Oh, I'll try not to burn it.
Oh, be careful, I'll get that. There we go.
Anyway, we can use tongs. How about we use tongs?
Yeah, that would be better. Yeah.
Do you know, I lasted all of MasterChef pretty much without burning myself or cutting myself too badly. Under all that pressure, massive, races to chop things, all this sort of stuff.
That is extraordinary.
I get home and my husband says, "Oh, can you cook the school barbecue, the sausage sizzle?" "Yeah, sure." Give myself second-degree burns.
What is it
all
like?
All my friends kind of went, "What? How do you last all of MasterChef with nothing and then end up..." Yeah.
What was it like behind the scenes? I mean, for us as we watch it, it seems like it's a whole seamless sort of show. Bay leaves, was that?
Bay leaves.
Presentation. Look like the tree we brought down on the weekend. What was it like, the show itself? I mean, it's quite different behind the scenes, isn't it, to what we see when watching it on telly?
Absolutely, and in fact it's sort of slightly altered the way I view any television now, because I look at the screen and I see everything that happens outside the screen. Look, it's an incredible process to go through, and for me it was very eye-opening. I walked in very naively, thinking that, we'd cook for a couple of hours and we'd go home. That's what it looked like. It was on TV. Our days actually started at 5 a.m. And they would film in the house for a couple of hours because they had to film everybody doing their own thing because they didn't really know whose story was going to play out in the kitchen that day. Then we would go into the kitchen and we would film, say, from about 9 until 6, but there's a lot of waiting around. You'd be aware of this, TV. The common saying is, hurry up and wait. So you have to hurry into somewhere, and then they say, "Okay, now we just need you to wait there for an hour or two." So there's a lot of waiting. Let's try and get this turned down slightly without turning it off. I'm just going to add a little bit more stock because the lentils actually swell as they cook, and we don't want them to dry out.
Noticing they were swelling. Right. Those lentils were swelling.
We're going to leave them to just sort of.
I thought that was a natural.
Isn't it a miracle if I get anything on the plate today?
I can see a horrible accident here. I'm just going to shift that.
Yeah, good idea.
Around that way. Because it'll be all over before we start. Now, you mentioned the house because, so you got all the different camera angles. Was it like Big Brother in a sense that you did have all the cameras in there from 5 o'clock in the morning, and you were basically living together for how many months?
Yes, we were there for 7 months, 7.5 months.
7 months, and you were living in each other's pockets, aren't you?
I didn't actually finish my first story though.
Oh, okay, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Because
this will be quite funny because I wasn't actually planning on going. Third season, they advertised on TV at the end of the second season. Applications open now, so I actually went online and thought, just wonder how these application forms change because it's become this juggernaut. And I went online and yes, it had changed. It had multiplied in length by about tenfold. And each question that you filled out had to be completed before it let you go on to the next field. Now, stay-at-home mum, thought, time to kill. yeah, just fill it out, yep, next one. Didn't really think too much about my answers. And then at the end thought, might as well send it, filled it out, send, that'll be the end of that. And then I got the call up for the audition. And I said to my husband, I can't go on television, that's ridiculous. And he said, Kate, it's a weekend away from the kids, and you get to see the inside workings of MasterChef. I thought, good point. So off I went, did my audition. Then I get the call up to come to top 50, and it was quite funny because the lady on the other end of the phone says, guess what? You've made it to MasterChef. And I go, okay. Can I call you back in a couple of days?
Pick yourself up from the floor.
Yeah, and I started arguing to Luke, my husband, all the reasons why I couldn't do this. I can't leave the kids, I can't leave all these other things I'm doing, that's ridiculous. And he's arguing all the reasons why I could. Largely, they were, okay, come on, it's not like you're going to be there till the end. It's not like you're going to win it. Yes. So I kind of went in thinking, it's just a couple of weeks, I'll be home. I didn't even tell anybody because I thought, nobody watches the beginning in the top 50. I'll be home, nobody will even know. So I did. Man. Yeah, so it was turned out to be quite a interesting journey that I was not expecting.
So how many people actually applied like you did online? I mean,
I think for our year, for our year, I think there was about 8,000 that applied. Yeah, I know.
So big. 1 out of 8,000. How good is that, ladies and
So you
gentlemen?
can see why I didn't think I was going to be in there very long.
Yeah. That is cool. And was your motivation to be on there different to others? Like, were you all the same? Were you all wanting to be number one?
Yeah, I think different people have got different reasons.
Yeah.
I was there, largely by accident.
Yep.
But in the end, I decided, you know what, and this is what my husband was saying to me, wonderful opportunity. People don't get these opportunities to go and cook with these chefs and learn from these judges and just completely immerse themselves in food. And I treated it a bit like a sabbatical. I kind of thought, wow, I've got this opportunity to just learn as much as I can about something that I love, something I'm so passionate about. So for me, it was generally a case of just enjoy it for as long as it lasts, because it's not going to last very long. Anyway, so it kept going. So it was interesting then when I started getting into eliminations, I was in this awkward position where I loved being there because I was meeting incredible people, I was learning so much, I was loving everything that I was doing. I was terribly missing home.
I bet.
And so I'd get through an elimination, I'd phone my husband and say, I'm still in. And he'd say, that's great, keep going. Oh. So yeah, it was a little bit... it was also a little bit terrifying, I think, towards the end when I started to think, oh my goodness, what if I win it? I remember vividly on the first day, Gary saying to us all in front of the cameras, you've come here to change your life. I remember standing there thinking, nope, I haven't. I like my life. I just came to learn a little bit more about cooking. But the reality is, it has. It's incredibly changed my life. And so I think... there were some people in there who were determined to win. There were some people in there who just wanted to have a bit of a break from normal life.
Sure.
There were some people there who were like me. They just wanted to enjoy it for as long as it lasted. So there's different motivations, but in the end, I have absolutely no regrets. It was such an incredible experience.
At what point? Sorry, I'm conscious
I'm
we've got
just
food on the go here. I don't want to.
I forget the food.
Yeah.
Oh, we've lost our gas. That might be a problem.
Oh, right. Okay.
I was thinking it's taking a long time to boil. Okay, let's go again.
Here we go.
Ooh. Okay, beautiful.
The question I was going to ask you was, at what point in the MasterChef series, you must have reached a point and go, oh, actually, I really am I could have this in a bag, actually, I could win this. Was there a point that you actually got to that
I wasn't really sure until we got to final 2. It was probably around about final 5. Yeah. I suddenly thought, oh my goodness, I never dreamed that I would get to this point. Yeah. What would life be like, or what would I do if I actually was the winner? And I just started to freak out.
Because that's the thing. I mean, you get to the point you win MasterChef. Yeah. But then it's the whole new life that you have.
Absolutely.
After that, your own cookbook.
Yeah, that's right.
These sorts of speaking engagements.
Exactly.
How did you make that adjustment?
Look, to be honest, it was a tough adjustment when I first came home because I had been longing so much to be home. I got home, but I wasn't really home because the time pressure on the cookbook and then being taken away to here, there and everywhere. I was still under contracts for various, production companies, networks, that kind of thing, to do lots of other little trips and bits and pieces. And so I was home, but I wasn't really home. And my husband was just amazing. The entire process from the first day, go do it, we're fine, don't worry about it. He never once said to me, this is not working, can you come home? And so when I got home and we realised okay, this is carrying on, this is not ended, he just said, how about we continue on as if you're not here? So he still took the kids to school, did all the lunch boxes and the washing, brought the kids home after school care. I'd take that little bit of time off when they were home. So they were kind of none the wiser. In fact, my 8-year-old boy, at one point, I said to him I had to go away for work. And he said, work? Do you work? And, part of me was like, are you kidding me? And the other part was like, you know what? I'm kind of pleased he doesn't realise that I work.
Well, did they get to see you on television?
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
They did, but not every episode. Because of the timing and the age of our kids, Luke would record it and then they'd watch some of it, and then watch it at a later time.
Wondering why they didn't get this sort of food at home.
Yeah.
How are we going for time here? Right.
So we've got the lentils going there, simmering away.
Yep.
We will just make sure they don't simmer too much. And I've just got the pan over low heat here, and we're now going to make a simple rub for the lamb, because we're doing a spiced lamb.
Beautiful lamb too, isn't it?
It's gorgeous. I love local produce, and that's what was so exciting for me when Craig first talked about let's use local Adelaide product, because it is just, when it's fresh and it's grown locally and it hasn't travelled those miles, I think you notice the difference in the flavour. So we've got some cumin seeds and some fennel seeds. Oh, did I do something? No? And some coriander seeds. Now, technically, when you toast off spices, you should be able to put your hand in the pan and swirl them around. That's how low the heat should be. Camp stove here, harder to adjust. I'm not going to put my hand in, so I'm just going to shake it.
So do you want me to count them or not?
Yes, go for it.
How many you got
really
in there?
interesting viewing.
Now, I kind of alluded to the fact that, with the kids looking at you cooking at home, what sort of food do you prepare at home? Is it to this sort of extent, or is it pretty simple?
Let's just say don't generally have 3 hours to prepare one plate of food anymore. So, no, it's food on the go. Look, I do this dish reasonably regularly.
Yes.
And I don't think it's like anybody else. You get stock standard dishes and you just don't have to think about them, and they're the things you do when you're in a hurry. But the reality is my kids still love their sausages and veg. So, sometimes we do plain old boring food that we've done our entire life. But that's where the comfort is, and that's what the kids love. So I mix it up.
Food. Yeah,
sometimes I do what I like, sometimes I do what they like, and everybody seems reasonably happy. So that's okay.
Okay.
I'm just going to keep an eye on that.
Yep.
So with toasting the spices, the reason we want such a low heat is really because all we're trying to do is bring out the oils, and the heat allows those cell walls to soften, allows the aroma to come out. So as soon as you can start to smell the spices...
Can you smell these, by the way?
You can. Put it down the front. Okay. There's as soon as we've got them warm and you can smell it, they're done. Now, if you're making a curry, you can toast them a lot further and get a much richer flavour. But in this particular dish, we're actually going to be coating it on the lamb, and it's going back in the pan. So it doesn't actually need to have all the stuff sorted right now, because it's going to cook again further. And so what we're going to do is put those spices into a mortar and pestle.
Nice.
Yep.
Well, I don't know what you guys are having, but this is out.
Now, I use a pinch at this point, a pinch of flaked salt. The reason being is that actually helps to...
I can do that for you if you want.
Go for it.
Yeah, that seems like a manly thing to do.
That actually helps to grind down the spices a bit more. Now, in this particular dish, I'm not looking...
Just joking. That was just joke. Just teasing. Just razzing them up a bit.
I'm not actually looking for a really fine powder, because one of the things when you're thinking about any dish as well is that food is not just about, taste is not just about flavour. Some chefs would argue texture is equally important. So I actually want a little bit of the spicy, crusty texture on the outside of this.
Oh, you wanted that, did you?
Yeah. No, that's all good. That's all good. Gosh, it's a tease.
This is cool. How good's that, blokes? It's like a tool out of the garage, isn't it?
Okay, and then we're going to...
like bread.
We're going to chuck in a clove of garlic. Keep going.
Clove of garlic, yeah.
And a little bit of olive oil.
Hello.
And while you turn that in... Whoops. While you turn that into...
Not that much,
Mr. Cook's a good cook. No, I just got it over the side.
Oh, that's
While we
okay.
turn that into a bit of a paste, I'm also going to make up something else that goes in the salad, which is just a simple pickled onion. And all we need to do for that is put equal quantities of vinegar and sugar. So we're putting in roughly half a cup of vinegar and half a cup of sugar. And we're just dissolving the sugar. It's probably not quite half a cup. When I write recipes, I'm really accurate, so you know. everything's very specific because, you know, you've got to be able to replicate in your kitchen. When I cook for myself, just chuck it in. Tends to sort of work. So what we're doing here is just dissolving the sugar into the vinegar. And once that's done, we're just going to pour it over some finely sliced red onion and let it sit and come back to room temperature. Now, what I was trying to say before was that with taste and with that sensation of flavour, the judges talk a lot about balance. If you watched, you probably saw them go, oh, it's got wonderful balance. Oh, that balance is a bit out. And what they're talking about is that balance between sweet, sour and salt. They're the main three. You've also got in some cuisines hot or this umami savouriness or bitterness. But what I found when I was on MasterChef was that I tried to think about a dish in terms of sweet, sour, salt, crispy, creamy. Because if I had something sweet, something sour, something salt, I knew that they would work together.
Yes, that's right.
And what pickling does is it adds that acidity because of the vinegar. So it's a lovely way of getting that in. And once that's dissolved, as it is, we simply pour it over our onions and let them sit there and come back to room temperature. And it's as simple as that. You can do it with so many other veggies, carrots, cucumbers, all that kind of thing. Use different types of vinegars or different types of sugars, and you can create all sorts of different flavour combinations.
Nice.
And that will basically soften, those onions will soften a little bit from the heat that's in that liquid. But other than that, that's as easy as it is.
Do you still want that clove of garlic crushed or not?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it not crushed?
Oh, right.
Oh, it is. That's
yeah,
perfect.
okay. I just wasn't too sure.
All right. Yeah, no, so that's good. So now what we've got is a lovely thick paste. And it's still got some texture in it, so it's not just powder. Now, you can do this with powdered spices if you can't be bothered toasting them, but you will get a much deeper flavour and a beautiful texture if you use the whole spices. And we simply rub them onto both sides of the lamb. Now, if you've got time, do this ahead of time, stick it in the fridge for, you know, a day or whatever, and
Wash
you'll get
hands.
even more flavour. Lick them? No. Sorry.
Which reminds me. I'm joking.
So, now what we're going to do is we're going to put the pan back on there and get that nice and hot, and we're going to cook this rather quickly because it's. I generally choose to do a lamb backstrap in this kind of setting because it cooks quickly. It's a tender cut of meat,
Yep.
and so it cooks quickly. It doesn't have the same depth of flavour as a secondary cut. So things like shoulders, necks, and legs on animals, they do the majority of the work, and so they have a deep, richer flavour, but they have sinew through them, and so they need to be slow cooked in order to break that sinew down. Tender cuts like this, backstrap or fillets or belly and that kind of thing, tend to have very little sinew in them, but they also have less flavour. But, you know, we've covered this whole thing in flavour, and lamb, it's just full of flavour anyway.
Cool, so I'll be interested to know how long you're going to put this on for. So it is hard to know what heat this is.
This can actually be a little bit contentious because I'm cooking meat. If you've ever witnessed, you gentlemen, the conversation that happens around the barbecue, do you just flip it once or do you keep flipping it? I think many battles have been
part of the conversation,
fought.
though. Yeah. It's just that mannerism.
Exactly.
Back and forward,
now,
turning it over, back and forward. Oh yeah, he said that, did he?
So, I used to sit in the camp of you flip it once. I now sit in the camp of you flip it lots.
Welcome to the club.
Yes.
Welcome to the club, Kate.
So, the reason being is I did quite a bit of reading on it. I'm just waiting for that pan to be hot because I want it to sizzle. I'm not sure if it's going to get that hot. We'll see if we can get it up high. There we go. The reason being, I did quite a bit of reading on it when I was in the MasterChef house, kind of classic food nerd. Read cookbooks in bed, that kind of thing. So, and one of the things I read was Heston Blumenthal wanted to try and investigate this idea of sealing in the juices, so S-E-A-L. And the common thought was that you needed to cook it over high heat, flip it regularly, so that you would seal in the juices. So what he did was he did that. He cooked it, put it between two Perspex sheets and stood on it, and all the juice just leached straight out of this steak.
Kidding.
And what he basically proved was that you can't seal in the juices. In fact, what you're doing when you put it over high heat, so same process but different understanding behind it, is you are actually searing it, S-E-A-R, and that is bringing out those natural sugars and caramelising them on the outside because that's where the depth of flavour is.
I see.
The way you get the juices not to keep flowing out of the meat is actually in the resting of the meat. So what you need to do is put it over high heat and turn it regularly, because that way you get even cooking. If you imagine you've got hot surface, your meat goes on top, obviously it's going to give the most heat from the bottom. When you flip it over, that top has a chance to come down in temperature slightly before you flip it back. And so you get a more even cooking. When you do the old system of put it on one side, wait, and then flip it, when you do cut it through, you often see that grey rim around the edge, because that outside edge has been overcooked. Because it's sat there for too long. So by the time the middle is cooked, the outside is overcooked. So by flipping it, you're allowing it a chance to cool down. Now, if you're a gentleman who sits in the camp of flip just once, please don't.
So is there a right time then, or does it depend entirely on your temperature?
Well, it depends on your temperature, and it also depends on the cut of meat you've got. There's so many different variables in cooking. But also, you know, the reality is it also depends on the way you like it. You know, if you like the little grey rim around the edge, go for it. Food and cooking is all about putting food on the plate that you enjoy eating. So, you know, I say these things and I read these things and I go, yes, I'm convinced. If you want to still stay in the other camp, that's fine with me. Do whatever you like.
Here we go. Let's look for that sizzle. Yeah, that's nice. That's beautiful.
So if you noticed before, it didn't sizzle, so pulled it straight back out. We want that sizzle because we need that heat. Now, often with meat, you season it just before you put it in. I haven't done that because we've got salt already in that spice mix. So we've just got to be careful not to over-season. So now, because this is quite a thin piece of lamb, we're just going to flip it every minute or so. And this will also help in this particular recipe because the spices, we don't want to burn them. We will get a deep colour and there will be slight little bits of black on there which add that bitter element to the dish, but they, we don't want to completely blacken the whole thing. So I'm just going to keep flipping it.
Cool. Now
just have a quick look at these lentils. Yep. They're looking like they might be done. The best way for me to tell when lentils are done is simply to eat them. So they need a little bit more, and because the liquid is dropping a bit, I just add a little bit more. Because I think they need a certain amount of liquid to cook in, and like I said, they swell up quite a bit. They're nearly there. Now the biggest tip with lentils is not to salt them at the beginning because they form a really tough outer edge. So you always season lentils and that kind of thing at the end. But we're just going to flip.
What was it like, Kate, with the other contestants? I mean, obviously there's the degree of competition, but did you form some lifelong friendships out of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, at the beginning, I was actually terrified of going into a house with 24 strangers. I thought, oh my goodness, that's going to be the worst bit. In hindsight, it turned out to be one of the greatest parts of it. I love people, I love getting to know people, and you certainly get to know people when you're living with them and you're working with them. There are a few of us that work pretty hard at the beginning as well about establishing this idea of what happens in the kitchen stays in the kitchen. When we're at home, let's be each other's family because we don't have that. And it was we as a group, I think, had a particularly cohesive group. And even towards the end, you know, even when we were down to the finals, Michael and I would still talk about dishes we were going to cook, share cookbooks, and it was just a really lovely situation to be in. Yes, it was. That's all right. Yes, it was competition, but it was also kind of part of it sounds corny, but you kind of become part of the MasterChef family.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I still stay in contact with a lot of them, it's been really lovely. Rachel and Ellie, I speak to very regularly. I speak to Kumar reasonably regularly, and I see the others at events, Danny and Hayden, and
that's cool.
Yeah, so
and you really watch, subsequent MasterChef series and go, no, they're doing it wrong.
You know what happens when I watch the next season? I think, oh, you poor people, I know what you went through to get to that.
Hey, you know, something you were telling me just earlier, Kate, is that South Africa have literally just been watching your series for the very first time now. So from the 2011, which was the third in the series, they've just been watching it now, and you just won over there.
I did.
So congratulations.
Thank you. Live it all again. It's quite funny because it's a show that actually is very popular in a lot of different countries. I would argue that in India it's even more popular than it is here.
Is it really?
And it's the Australian version, bizarre. And South Africa, it's very popular. But it was quite funny. I could tell from my computer. I'd wake up in the morning, turn on my computer, and I'd say to my husband, oh, just one in the Netherlands. Because there'd be, a string of emails. And, I just won in Quebec. I didn't even know we were in Quebec.
That's fantastic. And so have you had opportunity to go overseas because of that?
I have. It's been fantastic. Just this year I was invited to India to do some work with the Marriott Hotel. So that's been great. Cool. talking a little bit with South Africa at the moment. Whether that comes off, I'm not sure. But yeah, it's been some incredible opportunities to travel and to keep meeting people and learning more things. So you can see here it's starting to blacken slightly. Now, one of the biggest issues with cooking meat is to know when it's done. And again, it depends on what you like. Some people like it well done. With lamb, I like it pink right through the middle.
Wow, okay.
And I think the best way to do it is to just keep touching it and almost teach yourself as time goes by how you like it. You will make mistakes. Sometimes you'll feel it and you think, yes, I think that's ready, take it out. And then you'll cut it open and think, oh no, I overdid it or I underdid it. But if you can bank that thought and then next time you come to it, you feel it again and you adjust it. And I think it takes time to work out that feel, but it's the only way you can really tell. So I actually think that's done, because what we also need to keep in mind, make sure I turn that off,
yeah, that's off,
is that this meat is full of heat, and so it will actually continue to cook just sitting there. So you actually need to take it off just before you think it's ready and then rest it. So any meat that we eat is a muscle. And if you think about when you go to the gym, you work your muscles and, the next day you can barely move and you need to relax. And that's exactly what we've got to do with this meat. It's just worked quite hard in the process of being heated and all those cells are contracted and tightened. We need to give them a chance to relax. And that's when the juices that are trapped inside those cells will keep going between...
Maybe give it a drink or something like that.
Yeah.
Chill
Don't you dare go away.
So we're pretty close to bringing some of this out, I reckon, aren't we?
We are not far away.
This is ours, isn't it? This is only ours.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't think they're floating forks.
Now,
I've got my lentils. Can I show you what I'm going to do?
Please do,
I'm just going to
yes,
strain them off. Some people like to cook lentils by the absorption method where they cook it until all the liquid's gone. I personally find I like to just have a little bit of extra liquid. I find it's too hard, it catches on the bottom and that kind of thing. So I'm going to strain that off and put that into a bowl that I thought I had.
A bowl? You need a bowl?
I had one.
I'm sure
Anyway,
we can organise
okay.
a bowl.
You know what? It's because I put the onions in it. Doesn't matter.
We got a bowl we could use? No, not that one. No, that's the tissue bowl.
Got it sorted, my bowl.
Oh, you got it, okay.
So put our lentils in. Pick out the bay leaf because it's never fun eating bay leaf.
No, not much fun to eat.
And all we're going to do now is finish that off. And this is where a lot of flavour comes into food, is actually in the finishing off. Sometimes you taste it at the time and you think, okay, it's a bit bland. But this is where we add things like a little glug of olive oil and lemon. Because again, we've got that concept of that sweet, sour, salt. So we've got a bit of sweetness in the pickle and we've got a bit of sour in the pickle, but it needs another little hit of lemon. So I'm doing that with a little bit of zest just to give it an extra kick, because most of the flavour is in the zest.
Yep.
And then we're just going to stir through some really fresh parsley and mint. And that's where I think you get a lot of the lift.
I'm not doing anything if you want me to stir.
And a pinch of salt. And then we're just literally going to stir that around. Stir it around.
There we go. Now I'm getting involved.
And then we've got, see, our really soft pickled onions
they are
here.
soft now, aren't they?
Yeah, they've sort of collapsed completely. And I love it because they add just a little bit of vibrant red. Who cooks in the kitchen with a man and makes tractor sounds?
No, that was my thermomixer sound.
Oh, your thermomix sound! Gosh.
Ready?
So that's that component. Perfect. I'm just going to let that meat rest for a little bit more and then we can put it all together.
Don't want it to fall asleep. The lamb, that is.
The lamb, got it.
So we're going to be serving this in just a moment, are we not?
That's correct. Everybody's going to get a little sample of it in their seat that's been ably prepared by...
From this?
It's all right, settle down.
There's 150 people here tonight.
Oh, funny.
Would you like some lamb with your salt?
Okay. Now, the general rule with meat is you rest it half its cooking time. So if it's cooked for 10 minutes, rest it for 5 minutes. If it's cooked for 20 minutes, rest it for 10 minutes. When I did a private masterclass with Maggie Beer at Pheasant Farm, she cooked us the most beautiful roast chook I have ever eaten in my entire life. And because of the logistics of television, this chook had roasted for about an hour and a half, and then it ended up sitting for an hour and a half. So double its, equivalent to its cooking time. But it was lovely. She said to us at the end, don't be afraid of letting it rest for long periods of time, because I think it actually just improves the flavour. And when she cut into that chicken, it was the most incredible. It was so juicy and so flavoursome, and she said a lot of it is to do, obviously, with the breed of chook, but also the resting time. And so I learnt a lot that day about not being afraid of meat getting cold. I think often we think, oh my goodness, it's going to get cold, it's sitting there too long. But the reality is it holds its heat quite well. I personally think that meat is at its best flavour when it's just above room temperature anyway, so it's warm, certainly not cold, but when it's piping hot, it actually, I don't think, is at the peak of its temperature. And so by letting it just sit there, it allows it to improve in its juiciness and in its temperature. The other thing is, a lot of people say, should I cover it? I generally don't. I don't cover my meat at all because it's not normally sitting there for hours on end.
Sure.
If you've got a whole bird or a roast that's on a bone, that bone will actually help to retain the heat as well. If it's got to sit there for a bit longer than what you think it's going to retain that heat, then a light covering with foil is fine. But you have to be careful that it doesn't sweat inside there, because then it just waters down all the flavours that you've worked so hard to put in. So I just leave it to sit.
I know on Christmas Day when we have our barbecue, we'll let the snags sit out all afternoon.
No problem at all.
In fact, you're right, they taste better at 3 o'clock in the morning after. So I know exactly where you're coming from.
Absolutely, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
All right, you must be itching a bit to try some of this, are you?
Yeah, so let me show you how I put this together on a plate. I put a little dollop, can we see? I can put a little dollop of the yogurt on there, and then a lovely mound of our lentils.
How cool is that?
And then we slice our steak, it's not steak, our lamb. I love to slice it on an angle so that you can see the beautiful pink inside.
How good is that? While you'll keep talking there, Kate, but we've got our wonderful volunteers bringing it out for you now, ladies and gentlemen.
The lamb. So and it's amazing how a little pop of green just makes everything just sort of stand out on the plate. So a little bit of parsley in the middle.
Wow, look at
and
that.
And you've got a beautiful, but really simple, warm lentil salad with some spiced rub lamb. So hopefully you'll enjoy your tasting there. Well, Gary wouldn't be very happy because I spilt it on the side.
Oh, really?
But you know.
Oh, look, don't worry about that.
That's all right. Do you want to have a taste, Brenton?
Oh, well, I thought you'd never ask. I wouldn't mind if that's all right, but do we have any cutlery? Oh, here we go.
Here's a spoon.
Here we go. No, I should do the right thing, should I?
We'll get some cutlery.
I'll get some cutlery. I'm going to bring some chairs out because now that we've done that, we're going to have a bit of a chat out here.
Sure.